I'm going to welcome everybody to session 2 of the Interscholastic Sailing Association High School Sailing Coaches Masterclass. I'm Dave Perry. I'm sitting here in Southport, Connecticut, and I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Steve Hunt, who's out in San Diego. And we're happy to spend the next hour with you all, the high school coaches of the New England School Sailing Association, discussing the drills and exercise we do to accelerate the improvement of our sailors. And we welcome your questions and we welcome your input. And the chat room is a great place to go. So if you keep your chat room open and just ask a question in there. If Steve and I are talking, you can ask a question about what we're saying. We'll keep an eye on that. And if we see a question, we'll ask the person to ask it. But you guys can answer the questions also. The beautiful thing about these Zoom rooms, you got many layers of sharing going on, and there's certainly quite an experienced group in this group. So share your comments in the chat room, put your answer other people's questions, and elaborate. The chat room should be a chatty place, and let's make it that. We'll also stop and pause several times through our presentations and ask you to come on and ask us questions, and we're happy to do that. So you might want to keep a piece of paper and a pen handy just to jot down something you want to ask us. And the way you can do that is just be informal. Just come off mute and say, hey, Dave, this is Todd. I got a question. Or you can raise your hand. In the participant box, there's a little button that says raise hand, and you can just put your hand up, and that way I can call on you, and happy to do that. But there'll be plenty of time to do that. So here we are, about to share with you some of our favorite drills and sit back and enjoy our conversation. And Steve, it's crazy that we've seen it ended up in what's probably the most complex sport. You know, the rules are complex. The boats are complex to sail. They're not like anything else kids do. You know, the playing conditions, they're always changing. You know, basketball, the net's always the same, and tennis, the net's the same, the lines are the same, and sailing, the lines are changing all over the place. I don't know, it seems to me that there's no two situations that are ever the same, so to teach it is tough, and I'm sure you thought about it and tried different methods, but do you believe in drills? Is that something you like to use, or do you just let them go out there and race and give them some suggestions?
Yeah, I love drills. I think we do mostly drills. And I think the best part about a drill is you can repeat the skill set over and over and over again. Yeah. And it really helps people become great at it. And another bonus is you can talk to them in between the drills, where I think if you coach during a race, which sometimes I bark something here and there, you can kind of tell that they're not really paying attention. They're focused on the race itself, and they're distracted. So I think drills allow you to do a bunch.
You mean during the race in practice, you bark something at them while they're racing in practice?
Yeah.
No, I agree 100%. I'm a big drill person. I was the athletic director at Greens Farms Academy in Westport, Connecticut for 21 years, and small schools. So like in any small school, you end up having to do a lot of coaching. And so one season I was going to be coaching some boys JV basketball, and I played basketball as a kid, didn't know much about coaching it, so I figured I'd go to a clinic. I love going to clinics, and I love learning, and I saw there was a great high school basketball coaches clinic at West Point. And I'd always wanted to go to West Point. Well, hang on. I never wanted to go to West Point as a person, but I always wanted to go up to the campus and see it. So up I went, and we're sitting in the gym, and there's hundreds of high school basketball coaches, and the person leading the class, he goes, how many of you ever heard the saying, practice makes perfect? And of course, all the hands shot up. And he goes, what terrible advice. What a terrible saying. Nothing can be farther from the truth. When you do something, your brain remembers the pathways. It's firing the nerves, and it's remembering what it's doing. And the more you do it, the more it becomes ingrained in your brain. And if you're not very good at something, if you're bad at doing something, and you do it over and over, you get really good at being really bad. He says that's how bad habits form. And now you're performing, and you're under pressure, and your conscious mind's doing the deer in the headlights thing. So your subconscious kicks in and says, I know what to do, and starts doing all that bad habit stuff. We see it all the time where kids revert to their bad habits under pressure. He's saying the key for a coach, the only thing a coach should be doing is making sure the kids understand how to do the skills correctly. Make sure they can do the skills correctly. And then once they can do them correctly, then you have them repeat them. And you do your fault correction. And then you repeat them again. And the fault correction. Wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. And he says, the saying is perfect practice makes perfect. So I'm a 100% believer in that. In fact, Steve, when I was competing at college and became national champion and then made 2 Olympic efforts, I only had one focus. And it's the exact same focus when I coach. I've coached high school kids, I've coached Olympians at the America's Cup level. And I only have one focus as a competitor and a coach: skill acquisition. I just focus on skill acquisition. And to me, you can't acquire skill if you don't focus on the skill you want to work on and get better at it. You can't do it and doing a myriad of other skills. So I'm a big believer of drills. It gives me a chance to really focus on that. You know, when I was coaching at GFA and the kids would come to practice, they, hey, coach, are we going to scrimmage? Let's scrimmage. Or when I was running in practice, are we going to race today? Well, you're doing them a huge disservice if you let them scrimmage or go racing if they don't know the skill, know how to do it. Because just as you said, it's not a controlled environment. You don't get the repetitions. There's no chance for fault correction. They're so distracted. So I love drills. It helps me isolate the skill in a controlled way. And it also helps me maximize time, and that really accelerates improvement. So I think we're on the same page on that. Listen, let's talk about our drills for fleet racing and team racing. Let's start with fleet racing. But when you're thinking about drills, what's your method behind the madness? Like, to you, what makes a good drill good?
I think I want the drill to allow the kids to experience the lesson, you know, whatever we're working on. You know, as you've said before, if you say it, they may or may not remember it, but if they can experience it and do it, certainly they can understand it and be better at it. I think it needs to be fun too. I've done a bunch of different drills, and I tend to gravitate towards the fun ones. You know, they leave practice wanting more and they want to come back, so that's great. It needs to be simple to understand. I've used a bunch of different drills, and I've noticed some are slightly complicated and you lose, you know, a third of the group or half the group, and so you're kind of wasting time. And then lastly, I think if it's diverse, it's a bonus. Not all drills are diverse, but I'll talk about the up-down drill in a little bit, and you can do various things, focus on different skills within the same drill, so that's great too. Yeah.
Really good.
So you said you were the athletic director at Green Farms Academy for 21 years?
Yes, it felt like a little longer than that by the end, but it was a good gig.
Yeah. And you said you coached basketball. Did you coach other sports as well, I'm guessing? And
I did.
If you did you learn anything with those drills that you take over to sailing? Like, any tips?
Yeah, that's a good question. One thing I learned is, Steve, it's a heck of a lot easier to coach a sport when you're on land. Man, you know, you just walk out with a stack of colorful discs and you make your grids and you throw the kids in there, and then you want to make a little fault corrections. You go tweet, tweet the whistle, and they come running in, take a knee, look up at you. You talk to them, send them back to the grids, and off they go. And not so much for sailing coaching. My respect for sailing coaches went up a mile high after I saw how easy it was to be on shore. But I did take some things away from coaching other sports and watching other good coaches. And ironically, one of them was the value of grid work, the value of having a controlled space in which they were doing a certain thing, right within my eyesight and earshot of my audibles. So I took that to the water. You have to be a little creative, gather some more buoys, be thoughtful. But, you know, one thing we all experience is the kids just get out in the water and take off. And then you just waste a lot of time there. So I like the grid concept, and I'll explain it a little later. But probably more importantly, so one year I was looking for a boys varsity soccer coach, and I couldn't find one. So I decided to do it. Not because I was the best for it, but I couldn't find anybody else, and I was certainly over my head. But I decided I needed some training. And just like U.S. Sailing has level 1, 2, 3, the U.S. Soccer Association also has level training, and level D is their high school coaches course. I went and took it. And it was actually really good. And one thing the instructor was talking about was the common lament of all coaches is we never have enough time to teach all the things that we want to teach. There's just enough time. So the U.S. Soccer Association develops a concept called economical training. And what they say is there's 4 pillars. There's 4 silos of things that an athlete needs. They need the technical skills, you know, the dribbling and the passing, the roll tacking and all that. They need the tactical skills, the corner kicks, the 2v1, all the stuff you need in control escape. You need the physical element for sure. And then there's the mental, the psychological element. And all 4 of them are important. So he said the best drills that you're alluding to this have they touch on all 4 of those components. But then they said the secret in the sauce is that you pick one as your primary focus. Let me give you an example. One of my go-to drills is the cops and robbers drill. And I love it. And I do it at all levels and for all kinds of boats. And it's a control escape drill where one boat's trying to keep the other boat from getting away and other boat's trying to get away. So it's got all four pillars. It's very technical. You got to stop your boat and then accelerate your boat, tack your boat, jibe, stop, all that. It's got the tactical, what's the best position for positioning and control? How do I escape? What's my counter move if they do that move? It's certainly got the physical. Within 5 minutes, the kids are sweating. And it's got the mental. It's got the psychological. It's a game. There's a winner and a loser. You're successful or you're not. And I can even ratchet up that part by saying I give you 1 minute to escape. Or let's play 2 out of 3. Who can get to 2 escapes first? So it's got all 4 components. And then my job as the coach is to pick the one I want to focus on. So early in the season, you pick technical. Or maybe the sailors are new to the boat. You pick technical. It all begins with technical skills. So all my pre-brief is based on how do you stop a sailboat and how do you accelerate it. And then when I'm watching them go out and watching them do the drill, I focus on their stopping and their accelerating, their tacking. And maybe they're not doing the control escape quite right, but I don't mention that because that's not my focus. And I certainly don't have to mention the physical and the mental because that's built in. And then maybe later in the week or later in the season, they've got the technical down. Now we focus on the tactical. So I make a big deal about how far back to be and what are some moves to escape. So I really like it that way. And all my drills, I try to have all those 4 components and then pick the primary focus. And I find, Steve, it really helps me accelerate the improvement of my sailors. Well, listen, enough about why we do things and how it. I want to hear about some of your drills. So what are some of your favorite drills for fleet racing? And listen, it's just you and me here. So what are some of the secret ones that the other coaches don't know? I promise not to tell anybody.
Okay. Yeah, let me share my screen here. I created a little slideshow.
Okay, cool.
To show a few of them. So this first slide is just a practice start picture, but we do a fair amount of practice starts, and I make some caveats in there. Like, if I want people to do a port tech approach, I might say the top 3 boats from the previous drill have to do a port tech approach, and you have to sail under the pin at 1 minute on port, or odds have to do it, or evens have to do it. Just kind of make some interaction and have some kids experience something that you think is right that they maybe don't do, even though you've told them 4,000 times.
Kids.
Yeah. So you just make them do it. And they're like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. My favorite drill that we do every single practice at the beginning is the up-down drill. Some people call it the rabbit start or tack on the whistle. But here you can see there's a port tack boat going upwind. I'll let the video run in a second. But this drill is great. And my kids come out, they warm up. And then since we do it every single time, I think people like routine. It's comfortable. They all sail over to the area where they gather on starboard luffing to where the port tack rabbit heads their way. So I will pick a rabbit by putting 2 fingers behind my head, like bunny ears, and point at a boat and say, hey, you're the rabbit. Show them with their hands in case they can't hear you. They come over, and they usually laugh. And then a lot of coaches put a mark down and have the rabbit round a mark, but I prefer to have them round me. And so I don't like to waste time. So I put my coach boat in a spot where I think the rabbit will round me, head up on port, and they'll shoot right across everyone's bow.
Nice.
I know you've all had it where 3 or 4 or 5 boats are late, they're in the bad air, and for them the drill's horrible. So I try to make sure everyone's going to get there, and I might adjust for that. And then a cool tip, I think, is that I say everyone's name. I usually video it, not every practice, but a fair amount. I video it, and I'll say the skipper and crew's name in the video. And that way, when we start our debrief after practice, I put the video up and everyone hears their name and they see themselves. And it's a great way to get the whole team kind of engaged with the debrief. They're like, oh, they hear their name. Oh, there's me. And then they pay attention for the next 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that.
I'll let it run here. Boat 5 is Chris Barnard, a guest star. So I kind of focus on him, and I'm saying, I wonder if he can point with these young pinners. That way 110 pounds. He's a big laser guy. He's doing pretty well. It's great to have guest stars at your practice. It makes it way more fun. Like alumni, you,
Yep.
assistant coach. Kids love it. So the rabbit, as you most know, the rabbit tacks after everyone's ducked them, and now everyone's in a perfect line. And cool thing is it helps you practice ducking. It helps you, if you want to work on boat speed, you don't have to blow the whistle that much. You can just let them boat speed for a while. If it's early in the year and you're doing more tacking work, you can do a bunch of whistles for tacks. If you want to practice starting that day, you can do more accelerations. So I love this drill. Everyone gets used to it. And I do it more than any other drill for sure.
Cool.
Next drill is the secret drill that I shouldn't tell anybody. But I learned in college that rudderless is probably the best thing for boat speed. And I would come down to Monday and Friday practices at Charleston. Often I'd be the only person there with my crew. And I'd say to my coach, Scott Nixon, I said, hey, should I leave, Scott? And he's like, heck no, Steve. He goes, take your rudder off and go sail rudderless. So I sailed rudderless, I guarantee you, more than anyone in college when I was there. And it made me really, really fast. And I've also heard if you have your whole team sail rudderless, you can pick your A and your B division by who finishes first and second.
Yeah.
I have actually seen that to be true.
Yeah.
So, word of caution, though, if you've done it, you know this, but it's a little sketchy. People sometimes get out of control. If someone says they're too scared to do it, I don't make them. Sometimes you just have a small group of boats do it, not the whole fleet. You need open space. 5 to 10 knots is the best condition for it. If it's real light, it's real hard. And if it's windy, it's kind of sketchy. You have them tie in their rudders. So if they flip, you don't lose the rudder. And it really teaches you about boat balance and boat speed. So let's watch this video here.
What do you do with your centerboard, Steve?
You pull your centerboard up halfway.
Okay.
Or else you just do circles the whole time.
All right.
So here they're going to tack, so they trim in a little bit. Boat heads up with a tight main. Nice tack. Sails are together. It's fun to me that rudderless teaches you what a boat wants and needs. And you notice that they did a big roll and a big flatten. If you don't do a big roll, and most people don't, partially because the centerboard's up halfway, it's in the crew's way, but they're kind of nervous. So they do this like weak roll, and the boat just keeps bearing away on the new tack. And it teaches you actually what the boat wants is this huge roll. And I thought the roll tack was just to make, wind travel across your sail as you're flattening. But in watching rudderless sailors, I learned it helps the boat come out going straight, balances the boat.
Yeah,
so
teaches so much.
Yeah, it's great. And it gives the kids feel, and they become really fast for it. It teaches them that you have to sail flat or else you turn.
I love watching the crew. I mean, she just threw herself into that tack and then she flattened the boat and then she jumped back to leeward and it's all the feedback. Do you have both kids try to move or do you tell one kid to do most of the moving? How do you do that?
Yeah, if both people are moving, it ends up being a bit much. So I tell them, hey, initially, just one person should be the big mover and the other person to kind of chill. And maybe it's the skipper that's moving a lot. The skipper may ask the crew to move from the centerboard to the high side or something, but mainly that someone kind of relaxes and the other person moves around a lot. That's a great question.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's great. What else do you got?
So another is just a thought that you don't want to be super rigid. So in San Diego, it's often light air. But sometimes our sea breeze pumps up for like an hour. So if I get down there and have a plan, but it's windy enough to plane, I'll just set up a slalom drill and have the kids practice planing. And then usually the breeze dies an hour later and we just go back to whatever I was going to do. Not saying we do this for an hour, but we'll do the up drill and then I'll set a row of marks. We'll come down I'll set another row of marks and then we do up and we have a slalom back and forth where they're just planing. We'll start on a beam reach.
What fun.
And yeah, it's super fun. They love it. And they're getting wet and spray and, you learn about how to make a boat plane. And it's often puffy where we are. So you learn how to start planing and keep it plane. And then a trick I've learned coaching is you motor down one side. You have 2 rows of marks, vertical rows.
Yep.
Motor down one side. So they reach away, they jibe around the mark. And as they're heading at you, they may or may not be at the perfect angle. So you drag the mark up or down a little bit to tweak it.
you just tweak one side of it as they're going back and forth, and you can video as they jibe around the mark. It helps it be efficient. And then, then you shift on to something else after a few ups and downs. And then here's the last one I put in the presentation. This is one of my favorite drills. I got it from Dave Perry's Northview Match Racing Playbook, and really, really cool. James Spithill joined us one time, and he mentioned the exact same drill that he did all the time in the America's Cup. And it turns out it's great for a number of reasons, and I'll explain. So let's say you set up a digital end. You're going to team race that day. This drill is great for team racing and fleet racing for skill development. But if you have a digital end, I see the digital end as 4 starting lines. You have your starting line, and then between marks 1 and 2 is another starting line. The finish line is a starting line, and between marks 3 and 4 is a starting line. So I set each of them the length of a starting line when I set the digital end. And then you can have 4 pairs at each line. If you have 10 boats and 5 pairs, you set another one. So you need some marks, like Dave said. And then the cool thing about this, they can run the drill themselves. So you say pair up with someone of like skill, or you can pick the pairs. Mm-hmm. And then they start it by sailing above the line on port. And I ask them to designate what they're trying to win, whether it's the pin or the boat.
Nice.
And they get a boat length or 2 apart. I'm not a stickler on that. And then someone starts 2 minutes. So usually it's the lead boat's crew who's facing backwards says, all right, ready, 3, 2, 1, 2 minutes. And so now the leader sails off past the committee boat on like a broad reach, and they don't immediately start circling or battling. It's a time and distance drill.
Nice.
And the battle happens later. So the leader sails away. They pick their time to jibe and head back. And in match racing, you typically do 2 to 1, meaning you give yourself extra time. So if you think you're 30 seconds away from the line, you jibe at a minute. So you have double the amount of time it takes to get back. And that gives you extra time to battle with the other opponent. So now this is the cool part. The trailer now either decides to jibe in front of you and lead, or they head up and tack and they push. And from that point on, it's a battle. And let's just watch this. So let's pretend they've already sailed away and they're already coming back. And these are skills you use in fleet and team. And so the trailer typically tries to stay out of phase. So here they head up. The leader wants to stay in phase and close the distance between the boats so the trailer can't bear away anymore. But here the trailer does a nice job. They keep their separation.
Yeah.
They stay out of phase. Here, Dave Perry teaches you have 1 second. The trailer has 1 second to decide, can I hook or not? It's based on speed differential and angle. And so here the blue boat thinks to themselves, yeah, red's a little too slow bearing away. I might be able to hook. So they hook. Rules 15 and 16. They don't want to hit immediately. They keep a little space, just get the position.
Yep.
They do a little luff, and they're calling their own time here, and they bear away and start. And so blue here wins the drill because they win the pin. But to be more precise on how you win, I say you either win by being literally ahead at the start. Often someone's just late, and so the leader wins. Or if it's an even start, I say race it out until someone crosses. So sometimes you'll see them sail upwind for 300 yards, just coming back and forth, coming at each other until someone crosses.
Yeah.
Then they just head downwind, switch it up, and do it again. So it's cool as a coach. You can bounce around from line to line and group to group, and maybe tweak a mark, give some instruction, and it lasts for maybe 45 minutes. And maybe towards the end, they've done it for maybe 20 minutes. You announce over the megaphone, all right, best 2 out of 3. And then they finish on their own, best 2 out of 3. And it makes it fun. The kids love it, and it really improves their skills.
Fantastic. Well,
so
listen,
those are some of them.
Yep.
Go ahead.
They're great. So I can say this is a good time to pause for a sec and give people a chance to ask Steve any questions about those drills in particular. The idea here is that you're all going to want to go out and run drills, run these drills, and you might want to try them. So later on, we're going to have a more broad conversation about drills in general, but he just showed you his warm-up drill, the up-down, the rudderless sailing drill, the slalom, his starting situation, and then, of course, the lead push drill. So we have a couple minutes for some questions to Steve about how he runs those particular drills. And so you can just come off mute and say, hey, Dave, this is Randall. I got a question, or you can raise your hand. I'll be glad to call on you. But questions for Steve about the drills he just explained?
Steve, I've got a question.
Yeah.
How do those kids get so good at rudderless sailing? I mean, what do you do other than having the board up halfway? Any other advice for kids that are just learning and trying to figure it out to get them moving in the right direction?
Yeah. If they're real new to sailing and they're scared to do it, I don't make them. You know, so often you'll find that with beginner sailors. They're like, I don't feel comfortable. So you say, that's cool. You don't want them to go reach off and T-bone some sport fisher or something and cause damage. But what I teach is do less than you think you should. And also you should designate which person's going to move more. If both people try to move a lot, you get chicken winged up and you start doing 360s. So I say, you know, someone should just be often the skipper is the one that moves more initially. The crew should just be the macro weight placement. Maybe they sit in the middle or move to the high side from time to time. And then less is more. If you just start cutting everything you're doing in half, it tends to work a lot better. And eventually you just end up looking like you're just sailing the boat as if you have a rudder. And that's the ultimate goal. I also teach if you're going to hit something, keel to leeward real big. So if two boats are coming together, you know, I've had some gnarly collisions with this, and sometimes you put a hole in a boat and it costs $300. That's a word of caution. So just also teach everyone heel to leeward. If you're coming together, just go big heel to leeward, and the boats typically just tack or drive away from each other. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, great. So then, Mark, do you have a question you want to come off mute and ask?
Sure. On that last drill, are you keeping the time for the start, or are they working on it by themselves?
Yeah, they work on it by themselves. And that's one of the beautiful things is that they're just running the drill on their own, and you can cruise around in the coach boat and watch different groups, coach different groups. And then the timing for each group is different, you know, because some might race upwind for 5 minutes and come back down, and they might do 3 when another group just pumps them out and does 6 of them or something. If I'm near them, I like start my watch just to be in touch with the group I'm watching based on the boat's call at the beginning. So yeah, sometimes people are over and, you know, they say, hey, you were over on that one, you know, whatever. But the best thing is that they're in a full-on battle and they're working on time and distance. It's really, really cool drill.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Steve, my question is when you've got those like, you know, boat on boat drills, do you find it's more constructive to put the, you know, an equal skill boats together, or like one higher skill, one lower skill? What's the best thing there?
I think it's better for similar skill. Sometimes I mix it up, but if the skills are different, the better person just smokes the other person over and over and over, and then you get in the downside of depression and bummed out, and so similar skills a little better.
Then they go see Tim.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Great question,
That makes sense. Thanks.
Other questions about Steve's rudderless drill and his 2-minute drill? Jimmy, come on. Or come on off. And thanks for showing your camera and your and unmuting when you come on.
All right.
And there we go. Perfect.
All right. So I was curious about your up-down drill. Best I can understand is you're using that as an upwind speed drill. Okay, could you elaborate a little bit on how you get these guys to develop, other than just looking at each other? I mean, what other kind of things do we look at for coaching that upwind speed and point in that group?
Yeah, I think there's 3 parts to boat speed: heel angle, sail trim, and angle to the wind. So I'm looking at how they're steering, how they're trimming, and how they're heeled. And I will video and make comments to them. And then when we get in, I typically work with the back of the fleet, those that get shot out the back. And I try to identify their biggest issue. Maybe it's they're not trimming their main hard enough, or they're not sailing to the telltales well. Their outside telltales stalled because they're footing too much. You know, I look at the worst ones and identify their biggest issue and just comment on that. Then eventually everyone gets faster and faster and faster. Then it's more subtle details of trimming and driving technique. And, you know, the best people are typically the flattest people, heel wise. And so you start commenting on things like that.
Great. Well, why don't we push on and we'll have another chance for some questions later on.
Beautiful. Okay. So we talked about some cool drills for practice. So Dave, I have a question for you. Let's say you have a great plan of practice and you get down to the yacht club and there's no wind. Like what do you do? You pack it in, or what do you do?
Yeah, I send the kids home and go to the bar. No, just kidding. No, I love that. And I always have a plan A and a plan B and a plan C and a plan D. You got to be ready for, I try to imagine every contingency, and then the day before I try to look at the weather. I remember, Steve, I was doing a clinic in your hometown of San Diego where it never rains. It's always a balmy 6 or 7 knots in the morning. And I was doing a soda clinic, the match racing clinic for the kids, 40 kids, and I looked at the forecast and they're calling for 30 knots and hail on Saturday morning. And I had the kids from 9 to 4. So I got down there and I had all these plans and whatnot, and sure enough, it's just pouring like, I've never seen it rain so hard. And I looked out, and all of a sudden a dumpster goes down the sidewalk. You know, I saw the Jessup room, not a garbage can. The whole dumpster was going down. It's like, holy moly. So I'm in there, and I'm doing my video replay, and I'm doing my role plays. I got it all teed up, and then the rain lets up. And we run out to do a land drill on the front lawn there. And we're out there for 10 minutes. And boom, it's raining again. So I basically had the kids inside from 9 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. But we made it. I had a plan, and we got through it. I remember the saying once, P6, proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. I actually think it's P7, prevents piss poor performance. But the bottom line is you got to be prepared. And there's so many things you can do. Land drills. Get them out and walk through the situation. It's a great time to do that. Video replay. And we're going to talk about video replay next week. So I saw there's a question in the chat room, so hold that till next week. But we all have more video and we have time to show. Perfect time to show it. Good long video debrief. Discussions. High school kids love to talk. So we sit in a circle. I always sit in a circle. And I'll say, hey, who are the crews? And they raise their hand. I said, hey, have you ever been in a boat with a skipper that they got a bad start and they went dark? They were clearly frustrated. And all the hands go up. So I said, well, how do you handle that? And if there's silence, Mary, how do you handle that? Or Tim, how do you handle that? And then they start talking. And next thing you know, next thing you know, they're talking. And once high school kids start talking, you're off to the races. And you kind of guide them. A little chalk talk. There's always something you might want to tell them about, but make it brief. Or work on the boats. I think it's a great thing. I always talk to the bosuns at the clubs. And if we have a little downtime, we'll go do a half-hour work on the boats. It's a great way for the kids to give back. Usually they're using club-owned boats. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly great for the club to see the kids working on the boats. They love that. Or give them some hammers and go around. Every dock has nails that need to be hammered in. Or give them little garbage bags and have them go do a trash pickup. 10 minutes. Who can get the most trash? Make it a fun game. But it's great for them, a little investment in their playing space. The club loves it. Mock protest hearings. We never have time to do that. Kids and coaches are not strong in the room, so let's take the time to do that. I've got a book, 100 quizzes, and you can just pull a quiz or two out. There's the facts, there's the answer, it's right. Or even physical training. I was doing a seminar at the St. Francis Yacht Club once, San Francisco Bay. Woke up in the morning, and it's thick fog. There's hardly any wind. And I was ready to do a chalk talk, and the coach said, Dave, I'm going to take them for a run. And they ran over the Golden Gate Bridge and back. Now, I didn't do it. I stayed in the yacht club and played the piano until they got back. So there's so much you can do, and you just have to be prepared for it.
That's good. So you mentioned land drills. I've tried a few land drills, especially after your clinic, and I failed. I'm not exactly sure what I was doing wrong, but I asked my team afterwards, like, hey, how was that? And they were like, let's go sailing, coach. That was horrible. How do you do land drills? Like, what's the trick?
Yeah, well, great question. All my teaching is guided by this thing I saw on a poster. It was attributed as a Chinese proverb. I have no idea where it came from. But it's just so true, and it guides all my teaching. And it says this: I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. And I try to bring my coaching to the do as fast as possible. And land drills is a perfect opportunity to get every kid to do what it is that I want them to know how to do. I've been teaching it, and they're about to do on the water when they put the roller skates on. But in a controlled environment, where I can make sure every kid has some success. I can do the fault correction right there. It's totally safe. And I can set up all the scenarios I want and get them to go through it. So, and it's really good for X's and O's. If you're trying to teach rules of the mark, you just set up the buoy and the line. I'll explain that in a sec, and then you can run through all the scenarios. Or on the starting line, how do you create a hole, and how do you defend your hole, and how do you take a hole? It's great for that. Or team racing, you're in the 2-3-6, and you got to set up the 2-3 double cover coming out of Mark 4. Well, how do you do it? Well, you have them walk through it, and they see it. So here, I actually have some pictures from San Diego that might be helpful here.
Cool.
Here we are at the lawn, San Diego Yacht Club. This is by the pool. It's not a very big area lawn. Right? The props are simple. You need some poles. The poles make it, and the longer the pole, the better, because it gives the sense of the length of a boat. And then when they go to tack and jibe, it's a little more graceful. And then I mark the poles. In match racing, you're the yellow boat or the blue boat, so I just put a flag on there. But in the Grosse Pointe High School, I did some team racing clinics with there. We got 3 spinnaker poles, perfect. Or opti sprits. Or laser top sections. I even grab broom handles. And for team racing, just grab 3 T-shirts out of the Lost and Found and wrap them on 3 of the poles. So now you get 3 shirts and skins. Or sometimes if you have 6 kids, 3-on-3 land drill, put hats on 3 and the others don't have a hat. So you just make it clear who's who. And then the props are simple. You just grab the marks out of your coach boat, leave the anchors there. Grab the anchor lines, or maybe just grab some spinnaker sheets, and now you can create things. You be creative. This is a starting line. The lounge chair here is my committee boat. This line is the starting line. The yellow line is the boat lay line. And of course, the port lay line is a big thing in match racing. So you create whatever you want. But if you're doing mark rounding, you can actually physically make the zone with a line 3 boat lengths. So they can obviously see what it is. They're always saying, how do I teach the length of a zone? There it is. And then you have them walking through what you're going to do. This I was teaching about land sites, how to use a land site here, a line site. So here's how it looks like. Come on, puppy dog. Down cross, back up. So I aim at the transom of the committee boat. I look through the pin, and I see what lines up with it on the other side. So now we're talking about the dial-up and what the blue boat should do to try to escape. So now I'm trying to get Junior to walk across them. I use their names all the time, so by the end of it I know all their names. And now I want them to back up, so I just tell them, like, reverse the movie. Just bloop, 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 go up and reverse. Try to cross it again. And now he's going to try and cross again, but this time yellow is going to defeat the cross. So then I teach blue to go up, I teach yellow to go the other way. I call it spider. And now they come back at each other, perfect control escape, and boom, there it is. And I have them hold the poles for no more than 45 seconds. And then bang, 2 other people grab it. And I don't tell them who to grab it, I say, quickly, grab it, let's not waste any time. The next 2 come in and grab it, and off we go. And I'm telling you, Steve, the kids who get the most out of it are the crew. I've had crews come up to me afterwards and say, Dave, that was so helpful. I've never known what we're trying to accomplish in the dial-up. I'm really good at listening, so I release the jib and I trim the jib when I'm told to, but I never really knew what we're trying to do. And now I get it, and now it's going to help me so much because I'm going to know how much to ease the jib. And I'm going to be ready to accelerate when I see the other boat go, and I'm going to know what information to give. So it's so good for the crews, it's so good for the less experienced kids to do it on land and to simulate it. Basically, it's a great way to take something abstract from the whiteboard and bring it out into real time. So I'm going to pause for a second to see if anybody has any questions for me on, including you, Steve, on how we do land drills.
I have a comment that poles is huge because I just did level 1. Everyone does it with like their arms and stuff, and it just everything it didn't go that well. But the pole makes it so much better.
Yep. And the laser top section, it feels so heavy. Well, you just choke up on it, So it's all right. Any other questions on land drills? I think it's a very effective means of teaching. You can just spend 5 minutes doing it from the classroom, quick land drill, and down to the boat. But okay. All right. Well, if you have more questions, ask later. But so Steve, here we go. We've been talking about fleet racing. But you've obviously been very successful in team racing. Your team's won 5 Bakers, the National Team Racing Championships. So do you have any special drills, particular drills you do for team racing?
Yeah, I love the pig in the middle drill. You know, if you have 3 boats, it's great. And they round the pin end, and the first boat is trying to pass up the third boat. And the second boat is the opponent, and they're trying to prevent the pass back from happening or just make it take a long time. You know, I call that a win as well. If you can drag it out, not let it happen. So that's a great one. It's a continuous drill. You know, when the 3 becomes the new 1, I just have it start over. There's different ways to do it, but that's a great one. We do combo drills. I think you might chat about that a little bit, which is great. I love the 5-6 drill, which are 2 boats. And sometimes if we do that lead chase drill, we'll then slide right into the 5-6 drill. So it's smooth. And then remember, the digital end's already there. So the same pairing just goes straight from the lead chase into 5-6. And 5-6 is the 5 is slowing the 6.
Nice.
And the 6 is trying to push or pass the 5. If they do, they become the new 5. So that's a great one. And
Nice.
And then the last one that's huge is 2-on-2. And 2-on-2 team racing, and it's easy because last place loses. So they don't really have to understand team racing that well. And it's great too if you have different skill levels. You can put a good sailor with a less experienced and have the other team the same way. And I find that there's the most smiles. There's also maybe the most yelling, but also just laughter and smiles with 2-on-2, which is a huge part of running a great practice. You know, my top kids love that drill. And again, that's just based on like number of boats. If you ever have 4, do 2-on-2. Yeah, I know you do team racing clinics for various schools and also adult team racing for yacht clubs. And so what are your go-to drills?
Oh, thanks for asking. So I have done a lot of team racing. I find it's fun to coach it. And I put a bunch of my drills in the pre-read. And then in reading my pre-read, I realized that I changed some of the whistles in my nailing it drills. And I didn't update all the whistle counts. So I'm going to redo that for you and send it out in the next pre-read in case you're looking at it and going, what's Dave been doing before he did this one? So, but sure, I'd love to show you some of the drills I do. And I've got some video, and if you don't mind. Cool. I always start with follow the leader. I think follow the leader is everything. It's a simple warm-up drill. It's a lot of fun. We all experience a situation, we go to the water and the kids just take off and go upwind. So I tell them they got to come to me before they go anywhere. And once they're at me, I say, follow me. I just take off on a beam reach. And I yell to everybody, hey, everybody get in line, one behind the other, 1 boat length apart. And then I just jibe my motorboat onto a beam reach the other side. And so they're all following the leader. And I say, listen, keep 1 boat length apart wherever the leader goes. So they do that. And then I spin off and I tell the kid behind me, you're the leader. And I say, look, just stay on a beam reach, and then maybe I have them jibe again to get everybody in place. It's a great drill for inexperienced sailors because they're just following the boat in front of them. And you keep them on a beam reach until you want to get more complicated. It's a great warm-up. It's kind of fun. Sometimes they'll have the lead boat tack right in behind the last boat. So it's a continuous circle. So there's no leader or follower. They're just going around, and it's great for trim and all that. So that's a great warm-up. And then I do a lot of stuff with a whistle. And now I want to do an upwind speed test. And I think the rabbit start is fine. But I can just do right off the follow leader. I've got their attention. And now, once I get their comfortable boats, I just keep them on a beam reach. Actually, the trick is 10 degrees below a beam reach is actually the secret sauce. 10 degrees below a beam reach. I tell them be about 1 boat length apart. And then I say, okay, on the next whistle, everyone goes close hauled and you're racing. So this is what it sounds like. And it's a beautiful way to get an upwind drill going. On the next whistle, they're racing upwind.
Nice, I like that long whistle.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm a big believer that no one hears the first 2 seconds of a whistle. So I'm a big believer in getting a big mouthful of air and 3 or 4 seconds. But this is beautiful. Now they're all going upwind. I can get in behind each one of them down the line. Hey, trim your drill a bit more. Hey, number 3, get a little flatter. Hey, Sarah, you head up a little bit, whatever. And then I can have them tack on the whistle. I can have them, do a 720 on the whistle. I can have them put their spinnaker pole up in the bare way and set the spinnaker on the whistle. I'm in complete control. They're all organized, and I got them right there. Now, one of my go-to drills is called the Cops and Robbers. And as I mentioned, it's a control escape drill. It's got everything. And I do it with buoys. I just set a buoy, and they just go by the buoy on starboard. Doesn't matter who the first boat is. They just go by on starboard, and then they go reaching off on starboard, one behind the other. And as soon as the trailing boat has gone by the buoy, the game is for the leading boat to come back and round the buoy to port, as if you're rounding a leeward mark. So they're in jail, and the way they get out of jail, the jail break is around the mark on port. Of course, number 8 in this picture, they're the jailer. They're the cop, and their job is to keep them in jail. So 5's trying to escape, and 8's trying to control. Now listen, if this goes on for a couple minutes, mercy rule. You tell them to stop. Now they tack on to port. They reach back to the buoy. That's why I like to use the buoy, because it gives them a focal point. They go past the buoy on port for a couple boat lengths. Then they both jibe, and now the other boat's in jail. And they go by the buoy on starboard, and they keep on playing. I love drills where there's no ending. It just keeps on going. Well, let's say boat 5 was successful breaking out of jail. They did a great job. Now they're leading back on port. They round the buoy on port, and then both boats bear away to a beam reach on port. Now the boat that was the jailer is behind on port. Both boats jibe. Boom, drills goes again. And you just keep going and going over. And if you have a buoy for each boat, then they're all controlled. I go around my coach boat and give them coaching points. And you can do this drill without a buoy. You don't need a buoy. Just tell them to go off on a beam reach on starboard, and the leading boat's trying to get going the other way on port. The other boat isn't. They're trying to keep them there. So you don't need a buoy. So that's cops and robbers. I just get a great drill for everything. And as far as teaching team racing, I love to do the combination work, and I love to give them the combination, let them work on the 1, 4, 5, 2, 3, 6, or whatever it is. And I do a drill called the waiting room drill. And the way we do the waiting room drill is I set the digital in, and the waiting room is up at Mark 1 and down at Mark 3. Those are the 2 places for the waiting room. And you'll see here in a sec, this is at Grosse Pointe. The Grosse Pointe Yacht Club is a wonderful, wonderful facility. But you'll see here in a sec, I had actually 2 fleets going there. So it's perfect. So I get 1 fleet on the track, and the other fleet's waiting to go. So this is Mark 1. Here's Mark 2 right here, then down to 3. And the drill is, Steve, they race from Mark 1, they team race all the way down around Mark 2, and then around Mark 3, and then they stop. And then the waiting room is at Mark 3, and they're ready to go. The waiting room I'm talking about, just imagine a line from Mark 2 to Mark 1, and the waiting room is right there. That's the waiting room right there. And they wait on port tack. If there's any breeze at all, they heave to with the jib on the windward side. I tell them, okay, I want yellow in the 145 and black here in the 236, go. And they figure out, okay, I got the 1, okay, I got the 4. They figure it out, and off they go. And they race hard. And they get a chance to practice all the stuff we've been working on. So let me show you how it looks. So here they go. And this is the 145, 236. So here's your 5, 6 drill you've been working on. Here's the 5 trying to hammer the 6. 6 is trying to push. The 1's job in a 145, of course, is to keep the 1. I realize the video is not great, but you get the idea. The 2, 3's deciding to chase, so they're play 1. And then if you look here, you'll see the 6 comes overlapped on the inside. Well, that's a trap I teach. I say let them in there because they're from astern. And Rule 17 says they can't go above their proper course. We talked about it. And then I tell the winter boat, just head up. If the lure boat comes with you, protest them. And if they don't, just jibe, and then you own them. So I've given the little talk about it. I've shown them my model boats, maybe a video, and now I've got a drill set up where they can practice it. And they race down to Mark 3. And of course, Mark 3 is where all the team racing happens. And they practice their Mark 3 trap, which we did all the walkthrough on land. And then as soon as they finish, as soon as the last boat rounds Mark 3, they're done. All 6 boats jibe. They sail into the waiting room for Mark 3, which of course is an extension from Mark 4 through Mark 3. They heave to if they need to. Maybe the 3 teammates get together for a little debrief. Or maybe I got some coaching points. And then boom, off they go. And where they go is they go around to Mark 4. So they race from Mark 3. They race from Mark 3 down to Mark 4. They go back up to the finishing line. And when they finish, then they just bear off on starboard. They sail fast to Mark 1. They can have their debrief as a team. They debrief on the boat. They can have a squirt of water. I come alongside. You can give them some coaching points if you want. Or maybe you can rotate some people in. But there's no wasted time. It's a continuous loop. So I use that.
Sounds like with your land drill and your on the water drills, they're continuous. Like you like constant action. You're not stopping a bunch, huh?
You know what? I hate wasting time. I hate leaking oil. And we all experience the thing of not having enough time. So time is precious. But I'll pause and see if anybody has any questions for me on how I run the drills I showed you. The follow the leader, the speed start on a whistle, the cops and robbers, and then the waiting room drill. Any questions for me on those?
Dave.
Hey, Chris.
Chris here. Can you and Steve just develop that further? Like, we're team race centric in New England, and just I don't know, we're accused in New England of over concentrating on these situational drills, and so just expanding on that. How much do you or Steve, 1, 4, 5, 2, 3, 6 is kind of meat and potatoes. Do you have any other situational drills that you guys practice, whether fleet racing or team racing?
So one thing I do in that, Chris, is that same waiting room drill. You can do just the ABA pass back, the friend, foe, friend. I always tell kids team racing is basically 2v1 all around the race course. So you can send it out in pairs and groups of 3. Start again at Mark 1. And then, the goal, and I always keep the same A's on the same team. So if it was Chris, it was you and me were the A's and Steve was the B, then we go down we go down the 1-3, and Chris, let's say you're the 1, so your job is to get me in front of you. So you're trying to trap Chris and Steve and all that. And if you're successful and we convert to the 1-2, then I just go back into the 3 or you go back into the 3. It keeps it simple. The pig in the middle, it's a little complicated when you're always changing who's in the middle. So I do the ABA. I've even done just a match race around the track where the goal of the lead boat is to keep the trailing boat from ever getting to the next mark. And the goal of the trailing boat is to get to the next mark. Whatever they have to do, jibe out, whatever. And you can shorten it down. You can shorten it down for that. So you're breaking it down there. But Steve, why don't you talk about some of your team race drills?
Okay. And along with Dave was saying too, in that downwind with the 3 boats, you can practice high lows. You can practice 2 boats slowing 1 boat, 2v1, like he said.
Nick Ewanston, you got a question in the chat room. Why don't you come on and ask about that one, please?
Hey, I was just curious when you're thinking about your practice and you're thinking about the 2 to 5. Yeah, I guess first question is how many drills do you try and put in one practice, and then how much are you thinking about how one drill transitions to the next? How much are you thinking about those 2 marks from this first drill will be great 2 marks for the next drill, and I can maybe have them do some kind of transitional drill, or maybe they're doing a quick fleet race while you rejig the marks. How much of that comes into your practice planning?
All right. And by the way, I want to be let me just see. Everyone should turn the cameras on, please. We're not going to show any more video. And it's great to see the faces. So good chance to chat. So Steve, why don't you take that? 2 parts. One is how many drills do you do in a practice? And 2, do you try and stitch them together so that the buoys and the layout from one drill leads into the other? So take both those and then I'll throw some thoughts on them.
Yeah, I usually do around 3 or 4, and I certain drills per practice. And I certainly think about the flow from one to the next. And I also think about the energy level they're expending and whether they're going to get upset with each other. Team racing tends to lead towards more arguments than fleet racing. So maybe at the end of a team race day, you do a fleet race to calm them down, to cool off a little bit. But I think about the marks too and how you can parlay from one to the next. And sometimes like in the up-down drill, as I'm motoring upwind, blowing the whistle, I'll drop a couple marks. On the way down, I'll drop a couple more. If there's a big transition from one drill to the next with marks, I usually ask kids to help me. I'll say, and usually like a better kid, like my kid Jack, who's really good. He's also a coach, level 1. I'll say, hey, Jack, will you pick up the finish line for the digital in for me and bring it to me? And then I go grab a couple marks. And while he's picking up those marks, I might, if I'm leaving the starting line area and I want to set a gate, and there was a digital in, I might say to a kid, hey, can you grab marks 3 and 4 and set a gate above the starting line for me? And then I motor upwind and set, the top mark and the offset mark. By the time I get back, that kid's moved marks 3 and 4 to a gate, and now we can do fleet racing. So I certainly think about it. I hate wasting time, and I try not to waste time at all. And I also want it to be just boom, 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 boom. I want it to be hard. I hate it when they have time to chill out.
So before we go to Cooper, I'll jump in on that too. When I worked with the women's match racers back in 2009, 2012, we spent a lot of time training. And one thing that I like to do was create a drill that also builds in time to do some fault correction, some introspection. You know, the great soccer coach I alluded to before, Mickey Kites, think, act, and be creative. So I try and give them time to do that. So if you think of the cops and robbers drill, after either mercy or one boat is freed up and successful, they sail on port tack for 30 seconds or so. Gives them time for a quick debrief. And I tell them, if you need another 30 seconds, that's fine, as long as you're debriefing. What you don't want them to do is disengage from what you're doing, but you want to give them time to do the fault correction. But, you know, just a quick one. So that's my thing there. But I know Anna's team, they used to yell at me if I took too much time between drills. They're like, come on, come on. They like to keep things moving. So, and I think kids are the same way. As far as thinking through my practice, man, I'm compulsive. I always say that it's an hour to an hour. If your practice is an hour, you're going to spend an extra hour planning it. If you have a 2-hour practice, it's 2 hours planning it. And I think through everything. And I think through, Steve probably told you his slalom drill, where within the drill, he was able to adjust the marks on the fly. Or maybe he told you for his 2-minute drill, he sets a shorter digital end so he can have the starting lines. But they're all in place. Now he just has to enlarge it a little bit. So I always think about that. And the final answer to the question, Jeff, was a really good one, was Nick was in terms of how many drills. I think a practice should have continuity, and it should have a beginning, a middle, and end. It should all build towards something. So I'm not a big fan of doing 4 drills if we're going to work on 4 different things. I try to pick a theme for the practice and what do I want to focus on, and begin with some technical work, and then the next move into something where we have a little more tactical work, and then add some more pressure, and then put it together. So I wouldn't do in soccer, I wouldn't do a heading drill and a shooting drill and a corner kick drill or another technical drill, because it's just too much for the brain to handle. So I try to be a little more, fewer drills, but really make sure they do it well. All right, Cooper, you're being very patient. What do you got?
Thanks, guys. It's sort of a triple question, but it all revolves around the time management. How much time do you have per practice day? Do you have issues if the boats capsize, go upside down, sticking the rigs in the mud, because we do in Brenton Cove, and that really sucks up time. And 90% of our season where kids have got to get dressed up in dry suits and thermals and stuff, that just takes time. How do you manage getting your kids changed? Because my guess is they sort of sail in shorts and a spray top. So if you can address those 3 things as a time management issue, that'd be great. Thank you.
You got it, Steve.
Yeah, I really encourage them to be efficient with their time when they show up and get dressed and rig quickly. And I'm kind of on them all year for that. I think if you have a really limited window of time, I've heard some coaches send out the plan via email before the day, so you don't have to spend as much time briefing. And we have 2 hours, 2.5 hours on the water, which seems to be enough at practice. So I'm not super diligent about that. I have a 5 to 10 minute briefing, but I'm always kind of on them just to hurry up and be efficient. Because if we get 10 more minutes every practice, that makes a big difference in the end. And did I miss 2 parts of that question, or was that enough?
Yeah, it's do you sail in an area where if the kids capsize and go upside down, they dig the rigs into the mud? Because we do, and it's just a huge time soak.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, luckily it's not windy that often though, so we don't flip a whole lot.
Hey, listen, Cooper, I'm sure you have it, but you need an ATD. ATDs are essential. An anti-turtling device. 2 Clorox bottles tied to the top of the mast. Don't even hesitate. Don't even think about, oh, the boat's going to go slower. They all have the same bottle up there. Don't even think about that looks dorky. What looks dorky is mud and black on the top of your sail, and you dig in water. So anytime I train, anytime I go do a clinic, Barnegat Bay, it's like 5 feet deep. I mean, it's heaven for setting marks, but it's a disaster for a laser clinic. And it's tough to put ATDs up there, but you still do it. So I had to jump in on that one.
Right. So, Nick Ewanson, you got all your Clorox bottles, right, tucked under your desk. We can pick them up next February.
Yeah, I'm committed to it. I'm sick of scrubbing your sales anyway, so.
Hey, I scrub my own sales. Give me a break.
All right, let's keep it going. What other drills would you like to hear us talk about, or would you like to share some of the drills you do? We've talked about drills for fleet racing and drills for team racing. We all agree that drills are essential, and we'll end up with some compilations of drills that we can all refer to. But, you know, running a drill is an art and a science. So this is the time to pick our brains or to share your experience on how to run drills effectively. The questions have been excellent. What more do we got?
I've got a quick question.
Hi, Mark.
How are you? Hey, I coach on the Connecticut River, and Prescott Littlefield and I team up. A lot of times the current's going out 1.5 knots or more, and so that really makes it challenging. And I'm thinking, I'm asking if you would have any tips for how to keep boats in the waiting room with the current flushing them out.
Yeah, well, I've done a lot of coaching in clinics in current. Bayview, San Francisco Bay, Charleston, any number of these places. And so that's got to be part of your thought process. But, hey, listen, we're trying to teach the kids how to think. The beautiful thing about sailboat racing and the challenge for a coach, you think of almost any other sport. The coach can stand on the sideline during the game, the actual game, and you get back. Mark your man, you know, shoot. You can talk to him, but you can't do that in sailing. So I think part of the coach's job is to teach him to think. And part of our job is to teach him that, you know, you guys have to, I want you in the waiting room. Well, here's a news flash. The current's sucking you down, so you better be close-hauled sailing if you want to stay in the same place. How do you know in the same place? Because Mark II stays even behind Mark I. Perfect time to teach him about transits. So keep moving so that Mark I and Mark II are lined up. If they're not lined up, then you're drifting with the current, you're not going to be ready to go. So you teach them things like that. And you tell the crew, your job is to make sure the skipper doesn't wander, watch the current. And what a great lesson, because we all know the current's the hidden factor. So, and maybe I'll tell them the waiting room, stay up current of the waiting room, to be up current of line. Like in a starting line, I always tell kids, wait up current of the starting line. Make your final approach from up current. So those are some things that we talk about, and you can't have them waiting for long either, because as they're sitting there, they can't help but sliding. So you want to keep things moving.
Thank
you. All right, we got time for a couple other questions or remarks about drills.
Hey Dave, Henry Millett, can you hear me?
Sure can, Henry. Go for it.
Hey Dave, I remember. So I'm the coach of Indian Harbor Yacht Club in Greenwich as well, and you came by and did a day with us, and something you did with us that's been really game-changing for me with beginner and intermediate sailors in particular was that sharks and minnows drill, the right side, left side of the starting line drill. So I think you could talk about that. That might be real helpful to some people. Sure.
So, and Steve alluded to it in his opening thing about identifying some boats have to come in on port and some have to come in on starboard. So let's say you have 12 boats. Let's say they usually break half and half, either odd and even or last number 1 through 5, 6 through 0. Those are the two common ways to break them. So whatever gives you half and half, and you're going to do a 2-minute starting sequence, and the goal is to have a good start. But you tell the kids, let's say it's 1 through 5, 6 through 0. 1 through 5, you're the sharks. So you need to be outside the pin. You need to be outside the pin at 1 minute. With 1 minute to start, you have to be outside the pin. Then you can come in on port, tack, and go. The minnows, Charlie McKee is Sharks and Minnows, that came from him. The minnows are outside the committee boat at 1 minute. You can't go past the committee boat until 1 minute. And you can't tack. You're stuck. So it just sets up the situation of some boats coming down on starboard, some boats coming in on port. And then you do that for a couple times with fall correction, and then you switch. Now the 1 through 5 are the minnows and 6 through 0. So thanks for mentioning that, Henry. It's trying to be creative ways to get them to do the things they want to do in a race. In a drill.
Thanks.
All right. Any more questions, thoughts on drills? Anybody want to share a favorite drill?
So I have a question.
Hi, Deb.
Hey, we have 3 teams that sail out of a central location, and we have limited resources as far as marks and that type of thing, and chase boats, coach boats. So oftentimes I will be in a boat by myself with maybe 2 marks and I usually have the largest team, probably 5 or 6 boats. Do you have any drills? One of the things that we do in the beginning is do a box drill where they all have to stay within the 4 markers. You know, they chase each other around and then they get kicked out. And then usually after a little time for that, then I'll take them, my guys will follow me and we'll do a warm up. And then I'll try to set a couple marks. For me, a lot of times I find keeping them at a starting line, working and accelerating or slowing down. But any suggestions for drills when you're limited in resources as far as, and abilities? I have kids that are really good sailors. And then, as I'm sure as everybody does, you have quite a mixture.
All right, we'll make this last. It's a good one. It's a two-parter. Steve, I'll take the equipment side of it. And then once you take you got a variety of skill levels and how do you break them up and what do you have them doing to keep them both challenged? Listen, the marks don't need to be too spectacular. Again, some Clorox bottles tied together and some thin line and a heavy thing. You get a
big tides though.
Well, okay. So heavy.
So, I mean, it depends on the tide. How much road you need to go down to hold it and current. Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is, the problem you're trying to solve is you don't have a lot of marks. So it's just trying to suggest the thing that's floating doesn't have to be too fancy. It can, it can be pretty simple, and then you need something heavy, so to hold it. And, I mean, a lot of times we'll use mooring balls in the harbor.
Sure.
There aren't any boats out yet.
That works. Okay. Steve, how do you handle disparate skill levels in a group, and do you ever split them up? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the best one for this one because I typically have, most people are decent sailors that join my team, but we always have some new ones. So, and I just, I think as I said last time, I kind of revolve the practice around the least experienced sailors, and we'll do the up-down drill a lot more if there's less experienced sailors, and I work with them. But I realize I think I work with them by videoing the best sailors and then showing that. And peer pressure is pretty strong in high school. And kids want to be that sailor that you're videoing with the great roll tag. So, and if you beat up the less experienced ones and talk to them too much, they get frustrated and quit. So I think, I'll hit the low hanging fruit with the less experienced ones. Hey, you need to ease your main more on the puffs to sail flatter. And also I tell the less experienced kids, learning how to sail well is like learning a foreign language. So I say it takes months and years. So I really encourage you to just keep coming to practice and sticking with it. And eventually you will become very good if you do. And that takes some pressure off. And then I really just kind of work with the whole group and video the best kids. And then the younger kids or less experienced see that and they get better really quickly. So kind of revolve the whole practice a little bit more around the less experienced sailors.
Nice. The floor is open now. We can start with questions for my segment there, the follow the leader, the tacking it on the whistle, the speed test on the whistle, the cops and robber drill in the waiting room, and then we can broaden out to any question for Steve and I. Listen, you're all going to go out there and do drills. You have a chance to pick the brains of 2 people who've thought about them a lot. So let's open up the questions. You can raise your hand in your box, or you can just come off mute. Let's start with questions from me about my drills there, and then we'll open it up. So be the first questioner. Break the ice.
Michael.
Hi, Michael. Why don't you come off mute, show your lovely face, and ask us your question, please.
Hey, guys. My question is, how do you keep a drill going, or how long do you keep a drill going if you realize like your desired outcome is not going to quite happen?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So here I am coaching boys varsity soccer. And I felt my job was to teach them this and that and the other thing. So I had a yellow pad. I'm a yellow pad person. I'm old school. And I had the practice all planned out. We're going to do 10 minutes of warm-up. And then we're going to do 10 minutes of heading. And then we're going to do a shooting drill with our head. And then we're going to have I had the whole thing planned out. So after 10 minutes of heading practice, I just looked at my sheet. Oh, time to go on. We started to go on the next one. A kid yells out, "Hey, coach, I still can't head." I had my head in the boat, and I didn't have my head out of the boat. And I'd say that my biggest mistake as a coach is I move on too quickly before the kids can do it. What a disservice you're doing. Remember, the whole premise is you're trying to help them acquire skills. And I feel that if the drill isn't accomplishing what you're doing, you need to back up, simplify, go back to the grids, simplify, remove pressure, try to identify what the problem is. Maybe the problem is in the structure of the drill, or maybe the kids don't have the skill. And as Steve was very clever, and I hope you picked up on this, you might have different drills they might be doing. Like if there's 4 kids that get it and there's 8 kids that aren't, send the 4 kids on a 2v2 drill around the digital end. Let them go. And then take the 6 kids and do what you need to do there. And of course, if you have the luxury of an assistant coach, or maybe you got an alumni or somebody helping out, you send that person with your better kids, and then you're the better coach, if you will. You stay with those kids and help them out. So those are some of my answers for that. But don't go on your timeline, go on theirs. All right, Peter Kempe, you got a question. Come on.
Yeah, Peter Kemp from Christchurch. It got dark here, sorry.
Don't worry about it, man.
How many drills do you run through on land before you head out? Because kids can maybe remember one thing in their head, and like you call them together and try and like go over additional drills on the water.
Yeah. Well, Steve, why don't you take that one?
Well, I don't do land drills, so we just go right out on the water.
But do you try to do lots of different things at a time, or do you pick one thing or two? Like I think that was sort of the question: is how many rocks do you put in the bag?
No, I have one theme for the practice, and we'll probably do that practice 3 or 4 times in a row before we move on to something else. Too much. I keep it simple, 100%. And I may see other things during practice and comment on that have nothing to do with the day, but it's a one lesson for the day, drills that surround that lesson. We go do it, and we might do it for 2 weeks straight with slight modifications, so it seems like I'm being interesting, but I'm really doing the same thing. And then we, move on. But I think I do, various things every day throughout the year, and I just weight skills I'm working on more than others. But I don't just beat one thing over and over and over because it gets boring. But you might weight that more during practice. Sailing flat, you do more than any other drill during practice, but you still do multiple drills. Because if you just do one drill the whole time, they get bored.
Yep. I agree. All right, Brendan, you have a question. Come on, and then we'll go to Randy.
All right. Well, this is just a little bit more of a general question, but I do have it. I'd like to pose it to both of you. I love working with top level talent or higher level talent, and who show up, they want to get better. That's the reason they're there, is to learn from you and appreciate. But the reality of it is that a lot of us have to work with people who are there because they have to be there, or maybe some other reasons. I wanted to understand a little bit more just the motivation, even if you just have to work on basic boat handling and stuff like that, but the motivation that you guys use as tools to get them to have a more efficient practice and to want to run those drills, even if they think they're above it.
Cool. Steve, why don't you take that one?
Well, if they think they're above it, that's a tricky one. But I can make anything hard by commenting on things they can do better. Unless they're like the best kid in the country that's just winning every single race all day long, which never happens. You can always comment on something to push them. But for those that don't want to be there because their mom makes them be on the team or something, that's the hardest thing to deal with. And I think you have them in the coach boat sometimes, you have them sail sometimes. You can have them watch at practice more, but I really focus on the ones that want to be there and want to succeed. And the other ones I just kind of let ride along until they quit. Or if they just keep coming, they just keep coming. And I treat them as a great person, but I may not personally care so much about their sailing, especially if they really don't want to be there. They'd rather be playing video games, so that's more of their mom's issue than theirs. So I just, let them ride around in the coach boat and let them sail from time to time. And if they're happy, they're happy.
So let me jump in on that one. So there I am at a private school where all the kids have to do sports. So, and I was so used to getting this remark, whether they were 4th graders or 8th graders or even high school kids, their sports are required. And they'd always say, Mr. Perry, I just don't like soccer. And I learned that's not what they're saying. They're not saying they don't like soccer. They're saying at some point they had a bad experience in soccer. Or at some point, nobody took the time to teach them the skill, so they don't feel like they have the skill, and they don't like it. Or they just feel like, they're not going to be good in their head. So I try to, when I hear I don't like soccer, I'm really hearing, please teach me some skills. Please teach me how to do it because I really want to try it. And so I love fascinating on those kids that aren't paying attention or they seem like they don't want to be there. They actually do. That's my premise. But I'm going to take some time to teach them skills. So maybe I'll have them stay afterwards a little bit and, work with them a little bit, or I'll tell them to come down a little early, or we'll find some time, or I'll get, after practice on the way in, I'll say, hey, hop on here, and I'll hop on with you. So I love that challenge, and I don't just assume they don't want to be there. I try to figure out why they don't want to be there. So, all right, Randy, one more, and then I'm watching the clock. We are going a little later because we started a little later. Plus, this is our last session tonight, so you're going to get a little extra time because I think this is going well and you're enjoying it. So, Randy, what do you got?
Oh, by the way, great. That was a great answer to Brendan's question.
Thank you.
Steve, I had a question for you. You mentioned that you like to have a theme for the day. What are some examples of your themes for the day?
Maybe acceleration would be one. Starting might be one. Slowing downwind might be one in team racing. This past year, we worked on slowing downwind for like 3 months straight. It's like so difficult and hard that I didn't realize my kids were horrible at it. But to be honest, most kids are horrible at it. It's really difficult, high-level skill. So those are things that just pop off the top of my head. Sailing without using the rudder, even if you have one on the boat. But yeah, sail trim is another thought. 720s is another thought.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're coming to the end. There's so many books of drills out there, Steve. One of my favorite is this yellow book right here. Every high school sailing coach should have it. Hey, you got one too. Put together by our friend and fearless leader, Toby Baker, who's joining us on this call. And he's a longtime coach of sailing at Taft and then Tabor. But this is a fantastic book. And Geraldine Beal, who works for the ISSA, and in her office, she has these. So you can just contact Geraldine. It's right in the pre-read. But Toby talks about his philosophies for high school sailing, and then how to organize the team, and then some of his methodology for doing coaches, and then a bunch of drills. And Steve, I hate to pop your bubble, but on page 35, the rudderless drill. So there it is.
I saw that.
So there it is.
It's all there. I wish I would have seen this book sooner. I didn't even know it existed. What the heck?
Steve, thank you for sharing your compilation drills. And I know we put it in the pre-read, and I put some drills in there, and I changed some of the timing on one of the drills. I forgot to change the whistle count. It may have been confusing. So I'm going to redo that and send it out in the next pre-read. But Steve, any other books you're aware of that have drills in them that you find useful?
Yeah, the Sailing Drills Made Easy is amazing. I think you can get the book or a link to it online through US Sailing, if I recall. But it's really good. Amanda Callahan, the Roger Williams University coach, is a great sailor in person. Put the team racing drills in there, and a lot of really stellar coaches, wrote the preamble and worked on the book. There's a few revisions of it, and it's really great just for philosophy and drills. I wish I would have seen that one earlier as well.
Well, listen, these collections are so helpful. And Stu Gilflin, who's the Director of Education at US Sailing, he's always trying to find materials to help the coaches. They have another book called Teach Sailing the Fun Way. And many of the coaches here, I'm sure in the summer, you're either teaching kids or you're running a program that you have teenagers teaching kids, and you're always looking for fun ways to challenge them. So these books are great, and US Sailing has them. And Stu knows I'm here, and he wants to make sure that you guys know that he's on your team and you're all on the same page, and he's trying to help you. So he wanted you to be aware of a few things that might be helpful to you. The Starboard Portal is US Sailing's daily show on the internet, and they have all kinds of shows. Some are live, some are pre-recorded. I realize it's a little fuzzy on the screen right now, but he wanted you to know about. One is the Tuesday Tips, and every Tuesday, Erica Reinke and other members of the US Sailing team share their tips, which is very good. And then on Fridays, there's a fitness session, and it's done by the fitness coaches that US Sailing works with, the sailing performance training people, and it's at 10 o'clock in the morning every Friday. So listen, we all could use a little fitness, but maybe you're helping your kids get better at fitness than trying to transform the living room into a gym, and you can pick up some tips on how to do that too. He also is aware that many of you might be doing the level 1 training, and usually level 1 training is a 4-day course, but in this situation when the AP is up, US Sailing has done a creative thing, and they've broken the course into half. And the first half can be done online. It's over a period of days, and you can fit it around your schedule, and you can get the materials, and you can take the test that way. And then there's a 2-day in-person course where you go and you do your powerboat training and whatnot. So, but that level 1 training is excellent. And if you're trying to get it, here's a creative way, and you can contact Stu, or all the URLs that you see on the screen are in your pre-read. And finally, he thanks you all. The more he knows about your coaching situation, the more he can help you. So he asks you to take a survey. The link to the survey is in the pre-read, and you can win some swag, but also he can learn about what your needs are and better customize the programs. And he wanted me to tell you that last week, Nicholas Brandt Hansen won the U.S. Sailing Team hat, and Kim Sinatra won a free copy of the Sailing Drills Made Easy book. So there's a lot of good stuff on the line there. And then, of course, there's a fellow named Dr. Tim Herzog. Many of you know him. He's a sports psychologist, works with lots of sailors, including high school teams. He's based down in the Annapolis area. And if you're a member of US Sailing, you get a 25% discount over his program. It's called Reaching Ahead Mental Performance. And you all, would benefit from learning about that and passing it on to your kids. So there's lots of benefits for being a member. And listen, this isn't a plug to be a member just because US Sailing wants the money. It's because they can do more programs to help you, and they're trying to find ways to make it your benefit too. So many discounted programs for you. There's a May coaching discount that Stu's offering. So you get a $65 membership for only $49.99, and just use the code MAYISSA. It's all in your pre-read, because I know it's a little tough to see on the screen. And then there's a section called Coaching Essentials. So anyways, lots of ways to go out there and improve yourself and get better. So Steve, unfortunately, we're running out of time now. I've enjoyed learning about your drills and hearing you talk about how you do yours, and can't wait to get back on the water and try some of them. Hey, do you ever use video in your coaching?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the most effective tools I know. You?
Me too. It's something I use for the U.S. women's match racing from 2009-12. We just feasted on video, but it turns out there's a real art and a science to doing it. And if it goes wrong, it can be a real time gobbler. So I'd love to sit down with you sometime and hear how you do it and share how I do it. And maybe even while we're doing it, you can show me how you use it in a debrief and what you teach the kids about fleet racing through the video. So would you be up for that?
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Sure. Well, what are you doing next week? Same day, same time, same Zoom link.
I think I'll be here. Let's do it.
Right. Well, listen. So everybody, thanks a lot. You can come off mute now. Thanks for your patience, and thanks for a nice session on a Friday afternoon. I hope you gained some insight onto drills, and maybe it sparkled your mind to try a couple things different, and of course maybe reinforce what you're doing. So thanks a lot. Next week we'll talk all about video, the equipment, the setup, the playback, the debriefing, and should be a good old time. In the meantime, thanks a lot. Have a great weekend and stay safe.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Dave.
See you all next week.